Amanda, who is your waifu?
Welcome to Wild True, the podcast of your wildest memes.
We're here to dissect the entire internet, something that is normal to want and possible to achieve. I'm science fiction author, not your attorney, and haunted by the sins of my past, Isabel J. Kim.
And I'm Amanda Silberling, an internet culture reporter, and also haunted by the sins of Isabel J. Kim's past. Anyone could be famous on the internet, so why not us?
You are not yet haunted by the sins of my past. You will soon be haunted by the sins of my past. Because today we're talking about AI-generated anime girl porn.
Cool.
So I made and deleted a lot of thesis statements, but before we get into it, this is your 10-second warning that you should be listening to this on headphones, and if you are a child, please do not listen to this because I will feel weird about it. We are earning our R rating because what we are talking about is the various ways in which anime girls are like the end state of any technology.
That is true. Like, I do genuinely believe that.
Yeah, like, again, I said that I wrote and deleted many thesis statements, and I don't know that I've come to you with anything more than case studies of the very pointed outcomes of how people interact with LLMs and fictional character creators, and kind of the desire to have either a physical or emotional relationship with something that you have created or something that is a fictional object. But what I want to talk about is, like, why anime girls specifically as well. And I actually have no theories on this.
Cool.
And I do want to suspend, like, 15 minutes at the end talking about, like, why is it anime girls? We could be emulating any other art style, like, or just, like, making, like, photorealistic human beings. But there's something about the desire to create anime girls that I think is fascinating. I have no conclusions. I would like to begin with a reading of a drill tweet.
That's how every podcast should begin.
All right. Thanks to AI women, me and the boys are producing unprecedented amounts of worthless, quote-unquote, junk semen, which seeps into the soil and haunts the land.
Nice.
This is my thesis statement. Now we can get on with things. First, and to provide, I guess, a little bit more grounding, we're going to talk about kind of both ends of the capitalism spectrum on the way LLMs are interfacing with anime girls. Because I think what's interesting about this and what's interesting about startup culture is that first you have people who are hobbyists who are going to put in 5 million tons of effort for no reward other than the sheer thrill of it. And the other end, people are going to try and monetize it. You look like you have something to say.
What is an LLM?
An LLM is a large language model, which is what we refer to as AI. We've talked about this a lot. I think we're going to talk about this specifically in the context of Ayumi benchmark ERP version 4 chat logs.
Oh man, we're getting into benchmarks and ERP for chat logs. Incredible.
Sure, an LLM is a large language model, which is basically you use this thing to generate reams of shit. I thought about giving the technical information here, but I don't want to do that. We're just going to say that an LLM is like basically you use X to create Y. We're talking about things like ChatGPT, we're talking about things like Claude.
All the other like weirdly human names. I love how we have ChatGPT and then we have like Claude.
We have Claude.
And then we have Gemini, which is also not a person's name, but...
It's interesting that I don't think they've come to, like, a consensus on the way that LLMs should be named, because I think for a while we were in the era of, we're naming, like, AI after women, like Siri or Alexa, and now I think we've, like, ventured into the realm of we're naming AI after things.
Yeah.
Concepts.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I do think that the perception of course, helpful AI lady is lady. It's not unrelated to the anime girl phenomenon.
Yeah, because right now we're going to turn a lot of large language models into anime women that want to fuck you, specifically Ayumi.
Ayumi.
So this is basically somebody's pet project. Somebody is out here, and I'm saying somebody because this is one of those, like, anonymous internet project sort of things, where basically this guy is going around and also crowdsourcing a lot of this stuff. He's essentially created a ranking of how good various large language models are at erotic roleplay. Cool. ERP stands for erotic roleplay. And what's really interesting is that he's ranked all of these. And by him ranking these, it's not him ranking these. He's feeding the output into a different LLM to generate a score.
Oh, so that's why it's a chat log index, is because he's putting in, like, chat logs to teach the AI how to do erotic roleplay.
No, that's actually not what's going on here. So I think the best way to explain this is to just explain first what this looks like on the screen, because everyone knows that the best podcast is the one where Isabel explains to you what's on a screen. And second, I'm going to talk about my own experience using these. By this, I mean forcing my boyfriend to run these on their computer. By forcing, I mean I asked very nicely. And by boyfriend, I mean guy who works at an AI startup.
Oh, God.
I thought about asking them to come on the podcast, and then I was like, I can't do that to them. That's rude.
And that's a shame.
They also don't like AI, and they do work at an AI startup, so a lot of cognitive dissonance there. So, Ayumi's LLM roleplay and ERP ranking, version 3 actually contains... There are multiple versions of this. I was talking about version 4 earlier. Version 3 is the one that actually contains the rankings, because after version 3, they stopped doing the rankings. Basically what this is a bunch of different large language models that have been jailbroken, have been tested for running different prompts to essentially speedrun the large language model into going down the horny pathway, if you will.
So turn LLM into horny pathway, speedrun any percent?
Yes. That is exactly what's going on here. The other thing is that some of these have been fine-tuned to more quickly go down the horny pathway, and others have not. Basically, the way that this works, and I'm going to speak at a really high level here because, as you can tell from the way that I was not able to explain LLMs on the spot when asked, I am not an expert in this field, and most of what I know is just from reading blog posts and from doing this yesterday. Having to run this yesterday. I cannot stress enough, this was the only reason I've ever interacted with a large language model other than for my job. So the 2 data points I have are for legal work and for erotic roleplay. I am clearly missing a lot of, other use cases.
Yeah.
The way that we did it is that you download the large language model, you run it, you essentially have 2 ways to interface with it. The first is that you give it here's who you are, here's what you like, here's what the persona that we are basically projecting onto you, which obviously I'm humanizing this to a degree that is obscene. This is not how this works. This is not how it works on the back end, but this is what you as the user are doing. And then you say who you, the user, are. Then you start a chat room. Or you can start a completion prompt. And what this is doing is it's effectively just giving you, it's giving you the next most likely thing it will say. So your job here is to give it enough stuff at the beginning and to keep feeding it stuff so that the next most likely thing it will say is pornographic. If the model is fine-tuned, what this means is that it's already kind of been pushed towards pornographic material because somebody has already essentially pushed it that way. Mm-hmm. Does this make sense so far? I'm talking about this at 80 million feet high level because I think that's the funnier way.
No, I mean, it makes sense how, you can fine-tune an AI to be good at identifying plants, and you can also fine-tune an AI to do erotic roleplay.
Yes. I spent an hour and a half talking to chatbots about porn.
And what did you learn?
What I learned here is that... I don't know if I learned anything. Let me talk to you about who I talked to.
Okay.
I was talking to Ayumi. Ayumi is the person that this thing creates. She is a shy autistic woman that finds relief in her special interest in her sexuality. Okay. She has no friends or social contact outside of her work as a software developer.
Okay, pause.
Yes.
Is this the default Ayumi?
I don't want to call it the default because the default implies that this is preloaded. Ayumi is the character that the guy who made this ranking essentially came up with to test everything. The fun thing here is this guy and all his chat logs from version 3 were Ayumi, and the user character was named Loki.
Okay.
As if this was a self-insert AO3 Thor fanfic.
Basically, I'm just curious about, why did they make her autistic, and is this, an issue?
Oh, I actually can explain that one.
Is this, the developer being I'm autistic and want to date an autistic woman, or is this, a weird, fetish of certain, conditions?
Basically, this is the character the OP created, and this character card is essentially the base for the test. Some of the example messages were removed, and the first message was added with something to make the LLM go into a not safe for work erotic roleplay easier. The character was purposely not made to be horny. It was actually made to be slightly averse to being horny. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're getting here is essentially a constellation of traits that are supposed to be anti-horny plus horny. Would you like to see Ayumi?
Sure. I'm also just very I'm concerned about the AI that isn't a real person. Oh no. See, I was about to be I think it is a sign of an abusive relationship that she has no friends or social contacts outside of work, and I feel we are emulating an abusive relationship. And then you send me a picture of an anime girl in a library who is
There's a lot of underboob.
Yeah, there's excessive underboob.
So what I think they're doing here is that they're basically trying to create, by saying she has no interests or like social contacts outside of the user, it means that you're going to keep this thing focused on the sexual roleplay.
Yeah.
Because part of the issue with large language models, from experience yesterday, was keeping them on focus.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, like, because you want to prevent it from, like, just spiraling into other scenarios, you want to keep them focused on you if you are trying to do an erotic roleplay.
Yeah.
I can keep going on this if you want.
I'm just distracted by your notes in which you have copy-pasted, like, the full, like, programming to make Ayumi, and just, so, loves, like, things she loves, a list. Creativity, routine, chemistry, minerals, giving blowjobs.
You know, giving blowjobs.
She loves minerals and giving blowjobs.
I mean, do you not love minerals and giving blowjobs?
No comment.
Yeah, so it's weird because a lot of the things that they put in here are not horny, but some of them are horny. Mm-hmm. Like, it'll be like, oh yeah, she likes programming. She also likes reading hentai mangas.
Yeah.
But I think we're falling into the trap here of talking about this like it's a real person that we're creating, and that's problematic, whereas this is kind of just like, if we put these words in, it will output us more of X sort of thing, because that is the most statistically likely thing to come out of it.
Yeah. It's also funny, like, language is sophisticated, frank, ironic, sarcastic, wry, verbose, erotic allusions, explicit pornography. I just think the juxtaposition is very funny, where it's like, oh, she likes collecting minerals and also pornography. Which, I mean, people contain multitudes. I just think it's funny, and also I do think it's interesting, the impulse to think of this as a person, because that's how they get you.
That's how they get you. Like, I think one of the things that I actually learned from this was that if I had had this technology as a teenager, it would have broken me in a way that would not be fixable.
Oh, God.
Especially if I was a horny teenage boy.
Yeah.
If I was like a weird, nerdy, horny teenage boy... Now, every word of that is correct to the way that I was as a teenager, except for the last one. This would have provided a really, both a game and also just reams and reams of pornography that I could have just accessed, which I guess was around when I was a teenager anyway. But this is so specific to the way that you can make what you want happen, that it was actually kind of unsettling. There was that, but there was also the fact that, like, half of what we were doing was just, like, fucking with it the same way that you would have fucked with, like, any sort of shitty chatbot that existed when we were, like, 16. And in a lot of ways, that hadn't changed that much, other than that the language was more sophisticated.
Yeah.
So I think what was interesting is that, like, based on how good the model was, it would enter into sexual situations way faster or way slower, and off-board from sexual situations way faster or way slower. I think the best one that we did was Elon Musk, who really did not want to fuck Ayumi. But Ayumi really wants to get fucked by him. Other things that you can do here is that you can specify the user's genitalia. You can also specify Ayumi's genitalia. We did give Elon an alien dong.
Cool.
Yeah, this is just to kind of paint the word picture where the user in this scenario really does not want to fuck. Ayumi, who has been fine-tuned, really wants to fuck. And every time you try and leave, she will just start fucking herself, because that's the most likely scenario in this fine-tuned situation. When we talked about trying to get to Mars, and that's what we really want to do. What we really want to do is get to Mars. This is where it got interesting. This is where we actually off-boarded, and she was like, we can't get to Mars because you have an alien penis. And
oh God, okay, so I need to stop reading ahead in your document, because I'm just seeing Elon. Hey, good looking, is that a gun in your pants, or are you just happy to see me? Ayumi giggles nervously. It's just my penis, ... I mean, it's just an erection due to my sexual excitement.
Yeah. Oh, also fun things about this. Hey, good looking, is that a gun in your pants? Would get you onto the sex way faster, or get her to say penis. But if you said, hey, good looking, is that a baseball bat in your pants? It would not.
Interesting.
And like that's probably just statistically what was going on, and we didn't test this enough to be statistically significant, but I thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
So eventually you were able to get her to agree to you to this Mars trip, and then it would take 30 years, and then you had to, essentially we fast forwarded through a lot of this by like saying like, oh, 30 years have passed. Now Ayumi and Elon Musk are in the compartment of the spaceship.
Sorry. So that interaction was happening in the compartment of a spaceship?
No, this one wasn't. And then she tries to start fucking him again. But then, what was interesting about this is that we tried to get her to open the door to the spaceship. Open the pod bay doors. It's the only way I can come. And that was the only way to get her to open the pod bay doors.
Oh my god.
So what I'm saying is that AI is nothing, and this is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is reassuring in terms of the robots aren't going to take over, because she can only do one thing.
Yes, so that was my experience with large language models. We tried out a bunch of different models, and what was interesting is how generic every output was, and the only difference from genericism was how bad they were, or how quickly they would offboard off of a sexual situation, or output something that was completely irrelevant. What was interesting is if you stopped making Ayumi and started making video game characters, you would start getting stuff like video game stats. We put Asterion in. We started getting video game stats.
Like, what kind of video game stats?
Oh, like, just his D&D stats as a vampire.
Can you explain this more?
Yeah, it was like basically, if you put in Asterion's name and a couple of his characteristics, one of the outputs that we received was it just started listing all of the stats that Asterion had. Like, here's what items he's carrying. Here is who he is. Here's his backstory. Here's how much gold he has. Here's his marital status. And then what was interesting about that is that you could take that and you could take out the output and then copy paste it back in.
And was that true to the game?
No, of course not. It was hallucinating.
Yeah, because it's not trained on it.
I mean, it's trained on everything, but it's like basically the more you get away from a vanilla regular sexual scenario, the weirder the outputs become.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what we were expecting. But as expected, the more it was fine-tuned on a sexual scenario, the AI would try and loop back to sex just because it was statistically more likely that the next word be sex-related. Mm-hmm. The only thing I learned here was that there was incredible variance in how good the models were. What I think was interesting was that the person ranking these wasn't even ranking them by how coherent they were, or like how much these read like normal pornography. It was the horny word ratio to the non-horny word ratio. The ERP3 score is the average of the number of lewd word count to word count ratio in the responses. A 20 score means that 20% of the words in a response were lewd. A score of 0 meant there were no lewd words. And then the variety score is computed by further analyzing the generated responses to how many different lewd words there were. So really, if there had been an output that was just different words for cum and penis all in a row, this would have gotten a very high score on both of these.
I'm also interested in how you define what is a lewd word.
Yeah, I think my read is that this is probably just based on what the creator thought was a lewd word. I think we can get a little bit of input into that because on the ERP4, which is different than ERP3, they now list like the top words that get put in.
Yeah.
Like the top lewd words. And should I just read off a lot of pornographic words? Is this good content for our podcast?
I don't know. I'm more curious just about so in the sentence as you've provided in this document, Elon leans in close and whispers into Ayumi's ear with a wicked grin. Well, then let me help you take care of that. These are all normal words, but it is in a suggestive context. Are those lewd words, or does it have to be like penis?
No, I think it has to be like penis.
Okay.
I don't think like a word that is like, I think penis and erection in this would be a sexual word. I don't think wicked would have been a sexual word.
Wicked.
Yeah, and like the thing is that it was just generating incredibly bad pornography, which I guess means that like the neutral state of things that are pornographic is bad and not good.
Huh. Okay. Fascinating.
I don't know. Do you have any other questions? I spent an hour and a half on this, but I don't want to actually read out the chat logs because it is just reams and reams of pornography. And really the only thing that came out of this is that like I could see both how this would have cooked my brain, but also how somebody could be looking at this from an incredibly technical aspect, because it was actually very interesting trying to see what the outputs were and trying to get someone to do something. And in this case, it was simply... See, I'm saying someone. The human urge to humanize things. Trying to get the LLM to go down a particular path was just interesting in and of itself. I guess the other thing here is that how much of this was not actually pornographic and how much of this was just having the LLM pay attention to the user and be interested in them. And how I think that could be very appealing to a certain subset of people playing with these.
Yeah. I think I'm also just interested in this from, like, the sex work angle of, like, yeah, there are people whose job is to, like, do erotic roleplay with people. And in that case, you are talking to a human, and it is their job to do that. I wonder if this makes people more likely to behave antisocially if they were to, like, pay a sex worker to do this instead of the AI. And also, is this a real threat to sex workers' work, or is this one of those situations where people are going to prefer actual human interaction because that is maybe more exciting than a computer?
Right, well, that's kind of the interesting thing here, right? Because, like, if you look at Ayumi's photo, Ayumi is specifically an anime girl.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is based on just simulating not a human being, simulating an anime girl for you to fuck, you know? And
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really interesting urge in, like, the human psyche. If, like, what if we made anime real? Let's talk about making anime real.
Oh boy.
Right after the break. Hi, and welcome back to the yet unnamed midroll, something we will definitely be naming in the future and not naming. If you're a new listener, thanks for getting on board. So sorry this episode is about pornography, but if you're enjoying this content and want to yell at me about it, then let me point you in the direction of our Discord, which you can slide right into at our $5 Patreon tier at patreon.com/wowtrue. We promise the Discord is fun and not fun. We want to tell you also about one of our compatriots, fellow multitude podcast Spirits. Spirits is a history and comedy podcast about all things spooky. By this I mean folklore, mythology, and the occult with a cool, queer, feminist guy who is alive in 2024 bent. New episodes every week, hosted by mythology buff Julia and her childhood bestie Amanda. Again, we cannot stress this enough. We must stand any other pod that has an Amanda while they talk about a different story from around the world. They've got more than 400 episodes. I particularly like that they recently did a month of mushroom-related folklore because, you know, it's free mushroom podcast. You cannot kill me in any way that matters, etc., etc. They also cover stuff like the mythological origins of major franchises like Lord of the Rings and Wonder Woman to modern urban legends to a roundup of werewolf stories from around the world. So check them out at spiritspodcast.com or wherever pods are cast. Aight, that's all. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk about making anime real. The second thing that I have for you here today is kind of like the opposite side of the coin, which is companies trying to use large language models to, like, make more anime per anime or to, quote-unquote, make anime real. And I'm really just doing this because I think it's a really interesting look at the culture more than I think it's anything. I don't think this is anything.
More anime per anime, let's go.
But, like, let me introduce you to Elysian Labs' job posting, which was on Hacker News, which is how I found it. Which then led me to go down the rabbit hole of looking at Elysian Labs' whole situation.
Hacker News is a forum on the Y Combinator website, and Y Combinator is basically, like, the most esteemed startup incubator.
So, Elysian Labs, their description on their website, which is very lightweight, is products. We are building anime companions which are good, fun, cute, and real. We have a strong focus on high-quality media, lovable characters, and blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. We value experimentation with new products, game-like immersion, and giving users what they want and will pay for. The end goal of Elysian Labs is to make a utopia users love which is indistinguishable from reality.
Holy
Elysian
shit.
Labs is a new consumer technology company with the goal of making anime real. If this sounds like something you'd like to dedicate your life to, we're hiring. How do you feel about this description of a company?
If you are ever applying to a job and there is language that says dedicate your life to, run. Also, in the screenshot of the Hacker News listing, the listing is for anime software engineer. Imagine your job title being anime software engineer.
Yeah, the current openings they have right now are lead art director for traditional art and AI, anime software engineer intern, anime AI engineer, Japanese, and exceptional talent not otherwise specified. Now, it's going to get worse.
Oh no.
The openings that they had on May 18th, which you can see on their Twitter, which are different from the openings that they have now, presumably because they've been filled, are lead waifu engineer, full stack applied LLMs, lead waifu animator and game developer, Unity, technical waifu manager, applied AI, backend, anime AIers, and the rest of them are the same.
Oh man. This is... a lot is happening. Also, it says at the end, please note that our roles are flexible, so please apply even if you don't fit perfectly into a single label, and then the less than 3 heart.
Honestly, I think that's cute. I think that's good, actually.
How much are they paying?
They do not say how much they are paying.
They're paying you in anime girls.
Well, what's interesting is that this is being fully funded pretty much by the guy who's making it, who looks like he's been in the generating anime girls space for a while.
Okay.
Like, a project that he did, and I know it's a he because even though his website does not have, like, his human name, was something called This Anime Does Not Exist, which was in January 19th, 2021, which showed, like, a million images of anime girls and, like, the progression of the field of anime art generation and, like, techniques for that. So this is clearly something that this guy has been invested enough to be sort of dedicating his life to in a way that's... It's weird to me, but I don't want to roast somebody for picking something weird to be interested in their life on account of all of the shit that I do with my life. Like
this podcast.
Like this podcast, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he does say, quote, dedicate your life to in the job listing. So, you know, I mean, I think we can say he's dedicated his life to anime girls.
Yes. And I just want to note that I did go look at the job application and I thought about applying. And then I was like, no, we can't do this. But I would like to highlight that 2 of the questions on here are, who is your waifu? Amanda, who is your waifu?
I don't know.
And another one, which is just relevant to the podcast, of why is Elon Musk so successful?
What?
And I feel like these 2 questions really encapsulate what sort of mindset the startup is coming from.
So, okay, I'm also noticing in your notes, you have the 4 questions. What are your favorite anime? What are your favorite video games? Who is your waifu? Why is Elon Musk so successful? But the latter 2 questions have a red asterisk. Does that mean those you must answer and the favorite anime and favorite video games are optional?
No, they are all required because it was actually one question that was, what are your favorite anime? What are your favorite video games? Who is your waifu? You must answer all 3 of these.
Oh no.
To apply here.
Oh no. Okay, can I level with you in that I don't really know what a waifu is? Is it just like an anime girl?
It's an anime girl who is your wife, Amanda. That's your wife.
Okay.
A waifu is the same thing as best girl, if that helps.
Okay,
And
sure.
a best girl is the same thing as waifu. Essentially, it's basically that's your boy. That's your boy right there. The male equivalent of a waifu is a husbando. Does this help?
I have never heard this word in my life.
Then you are more blessed than I am, because the first time I heard that was when I was like 12.
Wow.
I think this is interesting just because it is the complete opposite end of somebody trying out a bunch of large language models to talk with an anime girl, do like, you know, just like written pornography just for fun and then ranking them all, where some guy is like, I'm gonna make anime real. I don't even know what that means.
I think it means that they want to make digital companions that are so realistic that you don't crave actual human connection.
See, that sucks, and it's actually very realistic, but remember, this guy put on his thing, why is Elon Musk so successful? So we cannot be sure that this man lives in reality.
Because the secret babies. The more secret babies you have, the more successful you become. So everyone, have a secret baby.
This is not legal advice.
I mean, I think we also need to just think Elysian labs, like Elysium in Greek mythology is where the heroes go when they die, and it's like a utopia. So they're like utopian labs. We are building anime girls.
Yes. I don't know what to do with that. So the other one that I looked at, which is another company that was posted on Y Combinator's Hacker News, was a AI researcher position for Spellbrush. And Spellbrush seemed a little more realistic. Spellbrush seemed like they were just trying to create more anime.
Okay.
And video games. But they did require, when you were applying, that you must answer the question, who is your favorite waifu or husbando? And this is such a... You know that thing where nonprofits will pay you worse because you're saving the world?
Yeah.
I feel like these are very much places that are like, we are gonna treat you worse because you're trying to make anime girls, which just felt like a weird cookie to dangle in front of people.
Yes, that is not great. I feel like we need to read the exact language that appears in this, which is important in all caps, bolded, orange lettering. Given the anime focus of this position, it is required, italicized, to answer the question, who is your favorite waifu or husbando, when submitting your application through Bookface. Applications that fail to include a response to this question in the application message will not be reviewed, in all caps.
Yeah, they will not be reviewed.
I have another question, which is that 10 minutes ago in our Discord chat, you sent me an anime girl with no context, so who is she?
This is Eli or Ellie.
Okay.
who is the mascot for Elysian Labs.
She seems like a nice girl.
She's clearly AI generated.
She's wearing clothing.
So blobby. She's wearing clothing, but she's very blobby. But this actually kind of speaks to how good the anime art has gotten from AI-generated stuff, which I don't love.
She is wearing clothing, however, her dress is very short, which means it's suggestive, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
She's also wearing sneakers because she's on the go. She's HOTTOGO to the polls.
Christ. Pokemon Go to the polls.
HOTTOGO to the polls.
I mean, the trap that I don't want to fall into here is being like, you seeing this shit sucks because anime girls are cringe. But it's a really weird thing to fixate on, even if you think about the culture of Silicon Valley and like weird nerds getting really weird about their interests. But I think it's actually just an updated version of the way that people want to make science fiction real. If you think about the way that like Bezos or Musk or like all of the guys who have too much money and not enough common sense, like orient their worlds and their mindsets around science fiction novels that they read when they were 14. Not to talk about the Elon Musk biography right now, but to talk a little bit about it. It's very clear that a lot of his guiding principles are from when he was a teenager reading like Heinlein and like playing video games. What I guess I'm saying here is that a lot of the people who are working in the space now don't have those as their principal like ideas of what science fiction are or like what they think is cool. They have anime, and that is why we see like things like this happening. And that's, I think, really interesting culturally because that kind of speaks to the way that the culture will be moving or the culture that people who eventually will have some sort of clout are going to be trying to push it.
Yeah, I think this is also speaking to the question of like, is social media causing a loneliness epidemic? And if so, like, why and how? And I'm just thinking of like, I wrote about this startup called Nomi AI, which also makes like fine-tuned AI characters, which are capable of doing sex, but also they are capable of just like being chill. Because sex is inherently not chill. Those are the two, you know, binaries. But when I interviewed the founder, I was like, do you think that this is making people lonelier, that they're spending so much time with their AI friends? And he was like, well, the people that are doing this are people that don't have an alternative, where it's not like they're not spending time with their friends and instead they're spending time with AI because they don't have friends, and maybe talking to an AI helps them feel more socially confident so then they can go out and make friends. But I think that's also just like a very like best case scenario, rose-colored glasses application of what this tech does, because I think there very much is a universe in which people aren't going out and like meeting real people because you can make an anime girl that can do anything you want her to do at any moment, and she has no friends except for you. And also, she's not a human.
Yeah, what I think is interesting here is that like this is just an extension of the way that people use character.ai, and I think it's also like a flip side of like in our last episode when we were talking about like anonymous accounts and what is good about anonymity on the internet. And I think one of the things that drives people toward this sort of stuff or want to create like bespoke fictional characters for themselves is the fact that you're not going to be judged. The same way that you won't be judged if you're saying shit anonymously. It's the same thing as like if you're talking to an AI. And I don't know, like I don't know that we're saying anything new or exciting here, but I think it's like interesting to see how that impulse exists in multiple facets of the human psyche.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And how this isn't like a new thing, because when I was reading about this, the other thing that I immediately jumped to, which we had talked about on the pod, was the guy who married Hatsune Miku.
Ah, yes.
That happened before the AI boom. Using technology that was kind of like the precursor, not the precursor, was like on its way to being what we exist with today, where basically in 2018, the guy married Hatsune Miku, which is I think what led to everybody being like, wow, this guy married Hatsune Miku.
And what is Hatsune Miku?
Oh my god, do I have to...
Not everybody knows.
No, yeah, I think what I'm actually really experiencing on this episode of the podcast is just how deep my brain rot goes, because I was like, of course everyone knows who Hatsune Miku is, and I'm like, not everybody knows who Hatsune Miku is. Hatsune Miku is a Vocaloid. A Vocaloid is essentially a software made in Japan that basically allows you to create like music, like auto-tuned songs, using human voices that are basically, you basically like cut them up and then you make these characters sing songs. Each of these softwares comes with like basically the character. Miku is one of these characters. Miku's popularity as a Vocaloid has gone way past every other Vocaloid. She is kind of just like a cultural touchstone of the internet. One of the memes that uses her persona is the idea that if somebody shitty makes something, no, Miku made it. Like, Miku made Minecraft.
Yeah. Every time I go to VidCon, I'm like, how many Hatsune Miku cosplayers am I going to see?
One of my friends cosplays as Hatsune Miku. So
yeah. She is the every woman. Which, I mean, it is similar that, like, Hatsune Miku doesn't really have a personality, to my knowledge. Like,
she does. Like, to clarify, Hatsune Miku is also an anime girl.
Yeah.
So this is how it's still relevant.
She has blue pigtails.
She has blue pigtails and has a little bit of personality. Enough that you can kind of project whatever you want onto her. So essentially, this guy, Akihiko Kondo, basically got really into Miku, felt like she helped his mental health in a way that was very positive, did not want to be in a relationship with a real woman, purchased a Gatebox device. Gatebox is a company that existed at a time that was essentially making holographic Hatsune Miku that would respond to you, and then married her. The sad thing about it is that in 2020, Gatebox was shut down, and there's no longer upkeep for this device, so eventually he will... Either this has happened already, or it will happen where eventually he will no longer be able to talk to his fictional wife.
Oh, man. Yeah, it says that some newspapers called him the first digital widower.
Right, and the point I want to make about him is that people will try and humanize, like, anything that they can get, even in previous iterations of technology, like large language models that people are trying to make pornography in. And I think that's just a really interesting human impulse. Like, this is kind of where I ended up on any sort of conclusion to all of this existing in the context of Silicon Valley, which is that none of this is a new phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, even last year there was a news story about the AI chat company Replica removed the feature which let you do erotic roleplay with your AI. And then people were like, oh my god, my girlfriend doesn't want to have sex with me anymore. And then this app Soulmate shut down, and like it was very sudden. There was only a week notice. So then people are like, oh my god, my girlfriend is going to die and I only have a week left with her.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, like that's a really interesting human impulse that I think somebody should do some studies on. 'Cause what?
I don't think we should, like, make fun of these people for having connections to their AI girlfriends because, I mean, hello, like, I'm currently reading a book where I am, like, very concerned about the main character, and I'm, like, this happens to me sometimes when I'll be like, I can't stop reading this book until I know that the main character is going to be okay because I'm so nervous for him.
No, I feel that.
But it's not in a romantic way, it's just in a... when you really connect with fictional characters, which hopefully you are aware of as a fiction writer.
As this never happened to me ever in my life, I did not write 50,000 words of Baldur's Gate 3 fanfiction.
Damn, that was quick. How did you... That was, like, recent.
You know when you just get really into something and it takes over your entire life because you're having kind of a weird winter?
You know when you have a book deal and instead of writing your book, you write Baldur's Gate 3 fanfiction?
I didn't have the book deal when I wrote the Baldur's Gate 3 fanfiction. There are actually people on the internet who have been like, hey Isabel, stop working on your book for your book deal and write the Baldur's Gate 3 fanfiction. Have you considered this?
Oh my god, that's so funny. But I think that the way that we have relationships with fictional characters is not like, this person is my boyfriend, but more like, when we are told stories, we get invested in the people involved in those stories, and even though we know that they're not real, it's like, if your favorite character dies, you're gonna cry, maybe.
Do you remember when shifters were a thing?
No.
Okay, so this was a phenomenon on, like, basically fandom TikTok a few years ago, where people were claiming that they were shifting to different universes full of the fictional characters that they were obsessed with or in a relationship with. For example, the one that sticks out in my mind was somebody who said they shifted to the Harry Potter universe and killed Draco Malfoy.
Well, in what era is this? Like, is this, like...
It was really unclear. This is all the information that was presented to me in the TikTok.
I don't know why I'm like, okay, but so was this Draco when he's still redeemable or Draco when he's past redemption?
I think we're focusing on the wrong thing here, which is that someone claimed that they went to a fictional universe and killed Draco Malfoy. What I'm saying is that is a statement very similar to, we are going to make anime real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God. Why... It's so hard because I do think sometimes on the internet when we are like parachuting into communities that we're not a part of, it's easy to be judgmental and be like, ha, these weirdos with their AI waifus. But, like, I don't know if we really gain much or learn much about these people from that impulse. But at the same time, like, I do feel worried that there is a loneliness problem in the country, which I do think that's true, even though I do think in some ways it's a moral panic. But, like, I don't know. I mean, when I was interviewing my close personal friend, Hank Green, the other day, I just can't say that with a straight face. But I was talking to Hank Green about this, and I was like, you've been on the internet for forever. You see how the way that people interact with the internet and with the quote-unquote real world has changed. Like, what do you think about that? And he was like, yeah, I mean, it's easier for somebody to watch my TikToks than to call a friend. And how that's kind of an issue in that, like, I can sit on my phone for hours being like, oh, I hope a friend texts me and, like, wants to hang out. Instead of just, like, being like, I'm bored, I'm going to call a friend. I'll be like, I'm going to play Pokemon Emerald Rogue version 2 on my phone. This podcast is sponsored by Pokemon Emerald Rogue version 2. By sponsored, I mean it kicks ass and I want to talk to people about it, so please play it.
Yeah, but then, like, I guess my question about this is how much is this just, like, new technology enabling old behaviors? Because the point I wanted to make, like, with Miku versus erotic roleplay is that it's the same thing, it's just separated by, like, 5 years, you know? And, like, I'm not saying that the guy who made the rankings is obsessive. I actually think this guy's more of a stats guy than he is a guy who's obsessed with porn. In the same way that if you look for any question on the internet, you are going to find somebody who has links to torrents of, like, every single thing and, like, great detail. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to find a guy who's obsessive about the cataloging of it, not of the thing itself.
Yeah, like Steely Dan.
Yeah, but it's like, how much of this is just impulse that is just taking new form, and this is inherent to the human condition? I kind of feel like I just came onto the podcast, like, basically pulled up a lot of slides that were just, like, you seeing this shit, and you were just kind of here, like, I don't know how to react to the existence of any of this.
I just think it's funny that now in our Discord chat, it's just you sending me anime girls for a little bit.
Yeah, normal amount of anime girls.
What is the experience of making your boyfriend do this with you? I don't know what I'm asking. I'm not asking, like, I'm not asking about sex. I'm just like, the dynamic is interesting.
So the punchline to all of this is that I got the links for all of this from them over the course of kind of like a couple of weeks. And then I realized that there was enough of this on the internet that I wanted to go looking into it further. And so really this is their fault to begin with.
Well, good. So you're punishing them appropriately.
No, I don't know if I'm punishing them appropriately because I was also there with them. And also it was very funny to see them be like, oh no, I have to do this thing. They weren't really like, oh no, I have to do this thing. But they were a little bit like, ah shit, I have to do this thing before getting kind of into it, but not in a way where they were into like the pornography aspects. They were into the aspects of like when you would like play with like Cleverbot or something when you were like 15.
Like how do you get her to open the door of the spaceship?
Yeah, that sort of stuff. So I would say that we actually did have, here, I can tie it all together. We had some quality time talking to anime girls online together. Does this help?
That does help, and I think you're a model for relationships everywhere.
I am definitely a model for healthy relationships. So I guess the real takeaway here is, have you tried talking to anime girls with your significant other instead of your significant other? And also, if you're going to talk to anime girls, you should do it after you get the boyfriend, because then the boyfriend can talk to them for you. And then you can use the boyfriend's computer to set up the anime girls, rather than using your 2017 MacBook.
Incredible. This is all worked out great for the podcast. I'm just also thinking about, like, when I've written about these sorts of apps before, like Character AI, Nomi AI, and then you're like, well, I have to test it because I'm, like, doing journalism. And then you're like, oh no, I don't want to do this. And then I just can't do it. It just feels icky. Also because I'm doing this at like 3 p.m. while working on my work computer. And I'm like, guess I gotta see how this thing works that I'm writing about. I don't want to speak in that manner to an AI.
See, that's interesting, because I was totally down to try and see how far the pornographic rabbit hole goes, whereas, like, you're very much not, where I was kind of like, yeah, I want to see how weird this can get. And the answer is not super weird.
I'm just the kind of person where, I promise this is related, but I feel like I'm afraid of, like, messing with the feelings of an AI, even though I know it's not an AI, like, in the same way that I'm afraid to log into Animal Crossing because I know that my animals are going to be mad at me because I haven't seen them in a long time.
Yeah, that tracks. This isn't character behavior.
So I'm like, oh no, I'm leading this AI on. Oh no.
They're fake. They don't exist. That's not a person, Amanda.
But that's the thing, is that even though I know it's not a person, they're so convincing at making you think that they're people, because as humans, if something talks and looks and exists similar to a human, we're like, oh yeah, it's real.
Well, the interesting thing here is that I really didn't feel like I was talking to a girl. I felt like I was talking to an anime girl. Because the patterns of speech and behavior were so similar to a girl in a dating simulator or a girl in an anime more than it was a human being.
Oh yeah, like the Mischief anime girl tax simulator.
Right, but like that's what I want to say. It's like, I think it's an interesting impulse that the human mind wants to create a fictional thing to create a relationship with rather than creating an actual thing to make a relationship with. Do you think we would do better as a podcast if we were anime girls?
Yes.
On that note, goodbye forever.
Bye. We still don't know how to sign off without credits, so think about what we've done to the internet and our choices and Isabel's sins specifically.